Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. You're watching this very special series where we're talking all things festive period. What is demand likely to look like? What is pricing going to look like across sectors? And what should you, the entrepreneur, know? Tonight, we're putting the spotlight on the real estate industry with a conversation with the Brigade Group. Nirupa, Pavitra, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, really talking about several things that are taking place around us, whether it is the recovery that we're in the middle of, or possibly bracing for the third wave of the pandemic, or just to look ahead into 2022 and expectations from experts like yourself on both the residential as well as the commercial aspect of real estate ahead of the festive period. Let's kick off today's interview by first asking you to talk to your fellow entrepreneurs about a Diwali wish that you perhaps might have for them. What would you like to tell them?
I guess the Diwali wish is to just look ahead, and we know that so much has, happened over the last couple of years. I think the most important thing is that while we really don't know what's ahead of us and we can't control it, we know that we have come through some good things, some not so great things, but more than anything else, we've learned a lot. And to just have the confidence that given given any kind of situation, if we can rely on our own confidence and our strengths, that we'll be able to pull through somehow or the other. So the world is totally uncertain today, but having come through such difficult times, I think all of us can feel somewhat comforted that at least we've been through what is hopefully the worst of it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Pavitra. Nirupa, what perhaps would you like to kick off today's interview with and wish our viewers on?
Yeah, I guess, I think after the past 2 years, everybody's understood that, health and wellness is so important. And in the end, we have larger things to think about. We have a lot to be grateful for with the health of ourselves, our families, our employees. So I would just wish everybody health and happiness for this Diwali, and hope that, things can sort of resume to normal, and hope we don't have to keep talking about things like the new normal anymore. But everybody is happy to go back to their ways of mingling with friends, family, shopping, eating out, all those good things in life.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the real estate space. Since we're talking Diwali, and try to get a sense from both of you. Both of you are representing different verticals, if I can call it that, really, or different arms, really, of the real estate space, and try to get a sense of one, what has demand been over the course of 2021, but more importantly, a projection, if we can, an outlook, if we can, for what demand is likely to look like, given, of course, that there is caution being expressed as far as the third wave is concerned. But also, on the other hand, more and more adults, at least in the country, are getting vaccinated. We've heard from the Prime Minister on those big figures and also the targets that we're coming up on. Let's first start with the residential space. And from what we understand, large parts of the real estate industry are saying that demand is great. People are continuing to spend as they were before. In fact, they're willing to put more money now on homes than previously, perhaps. What can you tell us, Pavitra, sitting where you are? How is demand really, what's demand looking like? What's your advice to entrepreneurs to say, perhaps, if demand is looking good, sitting where you are, what's your advice for them about being able to sustain that demand going forward?
Yeah, the residential sector has actually done pretty well coming out of COVID, even the first lockdown and the first wave.
Yeah.
Although the first wave in our country wasn't as bad as in many others, and in fact, the second wave was much worse. But the first wave was a lot scarier because we really didn't know what was going to happen or how to plan or even what kind of effect it would have. But very quickly, it became clear that people were really reevaluating what their living situation was like. It has never really happened to anybody in their collective consciousness for the last I don't know, 100 years that you're just stuck in your house and you can't go out. So I think that's been a huge psychological effect on people.
Yeah.
They've really had to relook at their homes, in many cases appreciate what they have, and in some cases actually have people reevaluate what they were getting out of their homes and their living areas at large, their communities and so on. So I think it certainly resulted in people also deciding that they wanted to make a change for many different reasons, very practical reasons like just needing more space or access to outdoor amenities, or proximity to social infrastructure, medical infrastructure, whatever the case may be. Or in many cases, people wanted second homes, or homes that were close to nature so that they could actually spend the time that they now have from working from home, or maybe less commuting, to actually spend outdoors, going back to Nirupa's point on wellness and focusing on health. So
Yeah.
all that has resulted in just a lot of activity on the residential sector, and things that
Yeah.
are happening in the economic scenario, like a reduction in interest rates, has really increased the affordability for many people, especially those in the IT sector who have benefited from huge demand for IT services in general, and also
Yeah.
their own job stability, and in fact, how difficult it is to hire talent in IT today. So those are the two huge factors that have been contributing to increased demand on the residential sector, at least in markets like Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, other top tier cities across the country. So since last year, we've seen a very good trend and pickup in the market overall. Although I will say that there is a sort of dichotomy in the market. There are some players and developers who are doing very well, and others who have had a tough go of it just because of maybe their financial situation prior going into COVID, and how hard it was to sustain sales during that time period.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's been positive. I think the trend for the upcoming festive season will be as good as last year. Quite frankly, for us and in southern markets, actually, prior to maybe a couple of years ago, we actually found that people during the festive season, they would rather focus on clothes and jewelry and things like that. But for whatever reason, it has actually come around to, it sort of affected the real estate sector as well. So the last 2 years were very good for us during the festive season. Even last year, despite COVID and everything, we actually had a very good pickup in demand. And this year
Sure.
also, potentially, we are expecting the same thing to happen. Although it has been sustained over the course of the last year,
Sure.
but we still think the mood and the propensity of people to reevaluate their housing situation and have confidence in the real estate housing market has come back. So we think it will actually
Okay.
be quite good over the next month.
Okay. Oh, the next month. Okay. Nirupa, what is the picture as far as commercial real estate is concerned? And also, I want to try and get a sense of what is happening as more and more people and more offices are reevaluating whether you need to have, physical offices. We, for instance, are shooting this entirely digitally, something that we wouldn't have thought of doing before. What's really the picture? What's the outlook? What would you like to tell entrepreneurs watching this interview?
Yes, thank you for that. See, I think what's been happening is that obviously the number of inquiries for office spaces dropped during the two lockdowns.
Mm.
After the first lockdown, the pickup for new office space was relatively slower than what it was after the second lockdown. Because I think, again, people had time to reevaluate how they wanted to go about things. But it has been encouraging post the second lockdown because the number of inquiries for office spaces has drastically increased. People are looking to either revamp their offices, either in terms of getting new space, so it could be renovating or upgrading their office spaces into a newer campus. They're also looking at consolidating their offices. So, for instance, if it was spread across various parts of the city, like north and east and west and things like that, then they're looking to consolidate it to one campus where they can have more control over the office environment. That
Sure.
said, a lot of the MNCs have not yet returned to work. It's more the
Yeah.
Indian companies run by Indian promoters who are back at work. But what is encouraging is that there isn't too much sign of a third wave as of today. Um,
Mm.
and that is encouraging because First, because the number of people who are being vaccinated, at least in the top tier cities, is significantly high. So that has been encouraging to get people back to work. Most of the people back to work have already been double vaccinated, and what we're hearing is that a lot of the office goers will are looking to reopen their offices either in Jan, and maybe the latest by say April or so. We haven't seen too
Sure.
many people give up their office spaces. It's more of looking to see how they can get smarter with their office spaces. So clean air as a service is becoming a demand. Um, a lot of technologies and IoT technologies to make their office operations more efficient is coming into demand. And those are the trends that we're seeing. So people want to monitor the air quality, the water usage, the electricity usage. So they are looking to come back to the office, but looking at more efficient operations.
I'm going to take a quick break on that note. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, we're putting the spotlight on the real estate industry in this conversation with the Brigade Group. Pavitra, you used the word dichotomy in your previous answer. I just sort of want to come back to that and ask you about, whether the spending power and this exuberance, if I can call it that, in the real estate market is restricted to a section or, a particular consumer class. And the reason I'm asking you this is, I'm sort of referencing a report by Pew Research. I just want to read out the headlines. This, of course, is more pertinent to the first wave, but I'm wondering if there's some part of it, like the tail of it, that has sort of lingered on into the second wave as well. So Pew Research is saying that there's been a sharp fall in the middle class and a rise in the poverty class in India, and that growth in savings has fallen sharply from about 21% of GDP to about 8.2%. That is, almost three times. So where does this spending power really come from? If you're seeing that more and more people have unfortunately lost their jobs, or there's no outlook as far as whether you could see salary increases, etc. Where is that then buying or spending power really coming from?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our product is also in the mid-segment housing range. So I'm talking about, real estate or homes that can basically be purchased from anywhere from 45 lakhs to 1 crore plus. And of course, there could be some beyond the 1.5 crores as well. So obviously, this is not, we're not talking about affordable housing or the lower income groups. And actually, that is the sad part about the entire pandemic and the effect that it has had across our country. Those of us who have been so privileged and so lucky to actually sit at home, be able to do work, draw salaries, still take care of our families, still be healthy and safe to an extent, we have not really felt the entire brunt and the pain of it, other than maybe having to be at home. And we all know, like, maybe we couldn't get our help at home to come in and help us, and that is the segment of society that has been hurt the most. Those people who there is no such thing as work from home. You have to go somewhere, you have to do manual labor, you have to be out there at a market and sell your wares. These are the people who've really been hit the most. And obviously that is not the sector that is getting reflected in terms of this demand
Yeah.
scene that I'm talking about. So it is about salaried people, and in the salaried class, specifically in the IT sector, because again, those are the markets in which we operate, and Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, and the proportion of IT services or related fields to IT, this is where we get most of our customers from. There could be some manufacturing in there, but again, we're talking about people who can afford 50 lakhs and plus type of homes. So we have obviously seen a very different side of it. But
Sure.
again, that doesn't really encapsulate what is happening across the entire country. And definitely there's a huge swathe of population that is just not so fortunate to be able to say they haven't been as affected.
Absolutely. Nirupa, I want to extend my question to talk about the rural market, not just from a brigade perspective, but from the real estate market. Could you tell us what the picture is when it comes to commercial real estate in the rest of India? Because in the metros, like you're saying, say in January, a lot of us may be looking at going back physically into offices. But is this reflective of what's happening across the country?
See, the markets we operate, as you probably know, is all tier one markets. From
Yeah.
whatever I have read, it seems like the co-working spaces in tier two and tier three markets are sort of picking up, and that's because a lot of the large MNCs, they are actually quadrupling their hiring. The IT services
Yeah.
companies are quadrupling their hiring, but the one question missing from most applications is where is your location of preference? And that means that people are actually working from home, whether it's in their tier two or tier three cities. So I think probably the tier two and tier three cities will be more affected than the tier one cities. And we are
Sure.
seeing a lot more flexible office space grow in again the tier two and tier three markets.
All right, ladies, let me take a step back and really talk to you about your journey as entrepreneurs and your learning and your role really at Brigades. The first time that we've had both of you joining us here on the show. So I'd love for you to really talk to our entrepreneurs about maybe one or two highlights of your professional journey, and maybe your biggest learnings really, as young female entrepreneurs. And while we sort of hate that word in some sense, because at the end of the day you're an entrepreneur, but this is, from what I understand, it's a very male dominated industry, and therefore as young women entrepreneurs in this industry, perhaps your biggest opportunities, perhaps your biggest challenges, and therefore your learnings from it, and what you want to tell our entrepreneurs. Pavitra, maybe to you first.
So learnings wise, I would say that I have had to figure out a good mix of kind of what are the new things that I can recommend based on the advice. Sorry, based on my expertise or experience from doing something outside or before I joined Brigade. What is the balance of bringing that in while also honoring and sort of recognizing that there's a lot of reasons why we do things a certain way that come from just being in this business for 3.5 decades. So there's always a push and pull of things need to change, but how much do they need to change and why do they need to change, and can we continue to do that change and make things different, such that it benefits everybody, but at the same time sticking to our core values and kind of what is core to our business. So I think that is always a challenge, especially when someone comes in with new ideas. It's sort of like, wait, it doesn't mean that everything that we did so far didn't work. I think we always try to recognize that whatever has been done so far has brought us to this amazing place today, and this is the kind of platform that we have today, and what can we do with new ideas and taking into account all the different things that happen today in terms of technology and things changing so very fast. How do we actually try to bring those ideas into the business? So I feel like that's been one of the big learnings. It can't just be I want to do things differently. It's how do you make sure you still keep the ethos and the intrinsic um, you know um, advantages of the company still going strong. In terms of being a woman and in this industry, I wish I could say that it didn't really make a difference or it doesn't make a difference, but it certainly does. I mean, it's different being in a room, and just somehow subconsciously realizing that you may be the only female in the room. It's not something that any of us are really consciously aware of all the time, but it is something that might be affecting us. I think the main thing is to actually focus on strengths. And if those strengths come because of gender, then so be it. I think women managers actually are a lot more empathetic. I think we actually try to understand what is the scenario at hand and maybe figure out how that is going to impact the way somebody works. And if anything, COVID has taught us that. It isn't only about performance, but it's also where someone is coming from, what is their situation that's really kind of impacting how they do in the workspace.
Nirupa?
Yeah. For me, I think the top three learnings would be one is that it starts and ends with people, to get any job done. And in whichever industry, I mean, I look over the hospitality, retail, and office, and I think all of them, everything, your success starts and ends with your people. So having the right person doing the right job is the most critical part of success. The second point is I've realized that, the devil is in the detail. Sometimes you can do
Yeah.
something 95% right, but if that 5% you don't do right, the customer's certainly going to notice and remember that 5%. So it's important
Yeah.
to get it right, even go the distance and do 100% right all the time. And I would say the third part is actually in execution, right? Because the success of any company lies in how well you are able to execute a certain idea. As they say, ideas are dime a dozen, but execution is key, and that's key to any startup as well, or
Sure.
a company of any size. In terms of advice, we have been fortunate enough to have been raised by a very visionary man and a boss and a father. And he has always told us to kind of focus on your job and not your gender. Our mother as well has been a very strong force in our life. She was actually Bangalore's first female stockbroker. She took over many parts of the business as well till she retired in terms of setting up schools, doing interior design. So she was very versatile. So I think you learn from your
Sure.
parents a lot, and she always said, I don't care what job you do in life, just make sure you are financially independent. So I think working has never been a question for us. We've always worked ever since
Okay.
we graduated from college. Being financially independent is extremely critical to both of us. And like I said, we try to demonstrate through the quality of our work and the rather than anything else. Yes, of course, being a woman has, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, you can use it to your advantage
Mhm.
as well. Sometimes being the only woman in the room has its advantage because people sit up and take notice when you do something right. So I think you can
Yes.
actually make a stronger impact as a woman. And many times people want to hear from you from a woman's perspective, and I think that way things are changing. So it's a good time to be a woman.
All right, so that was part one. Here's a sneak peek of what we have lined up on part two of this very special conversation with the young entrepreneurs from the Brigade Group. For tonight, though, that's all we have time for on this episode. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. For a small business, yes, you have to continue managing your profits, but now the role of the personal side really of employees becomes as critical, if not, even more critical than it was previously. What would you want to tell our entrepreneurs?
One of the things that I really took away was in such situations, you really have to be as conservative as you can be, but also not completely pessimistic.
While we were able to support our employees during the pandemic, it's because we have supported them throughout, pandemic or not. A lot of them sort of stood by us through these tough times.